On the way back from the dungeon, the hero Luke expelled Kai. Kai looked at the others and understood it had already been decided. Bria, the female warrior, was grinning. Rick, the sage, looked pleased. Frey, the elf archer, only shrugged. Sylvie, the priestess, kept her eyes down. Their reason was simple. Kai was no longer useful. Rick had learned a spell to open treasure chests, so even Kai's last special role was gone. He mocked Kai for thinking a support thief belonged in the final party meant to defeat the Demon King. Kai argued that he scouted ahead, mapped dungeons, found traps, disarmed them, and supported the party with tools and timing. Rick cut him off. He said items were nothing special. Scouting and trap detection could be done with magic. Mapping could be done with magic too, and another sage would join them soon. From now on, only firepower mattered. Kai went quiet, because they had already planned his replacement without telling him. Then Bria demanded all his gear. She claimed most of it had only been found because the party had been with him, so it all belonged to them. Kai fired back that he was the one who found the chest and risked opening it. Rick twisted that into theft and called party loot party property. Kai called them shameless. They had thrown him out without warning and were now trying to strip him of everything. Bria laughed and made it clear they had never seen him as a real comrade. Frey backed her and treated it as the hero's order. Kai refused. He had risked his life for that party too many times to hand over everything. But once the hero expelled him, Kai no longer had to obey him. Rick mocked that and asked if Kai really thought he could face all of them. At the same time, Bria moved behind him. Kai jumped aside on instinct. An arrow passed close to his nose. The elf archer already had another arrow aimed at him. A numb burning spread from the scratch on his face. Kai dropped to all fours before he understood what had happened. His limbs weakened, then locked and shook at the same time. Paralysis poison. Rick laughed that Kai had always looked like a dog crawling across dungeon floors. Even then, Kai tried to protest. Rick answered by screaming that Kai had never been one of them, then kicked him hard in the stomach. Kai rolled across the ground. Sylvie finally rushed forward and tried to remove the paralysis, but Rick stopped her and blamed Kai for refusing to hand over his gear. Then he told the others to strip him while he could not resist. Bria stripped him of everything. She took the winged boots, gauntlets, all his tools, and even his magic pouch. When they finished, Kai had been left in his underpants and ripped inner shirt. A pendant still hung around his neck. He had owned it since before joining the party. It was the last keepsake from his dead family. When he had fallen, it had slipped behind his back, and the warrior had missed it. Kai felt a brief relief. Then Rick noticed the cord. The warrior hooked the string with Kai's own dagger. When he moved on reflex, she slammed his head into the ground and tore it free. She tossed the pendant to the sage. He used appraisal, sneered that it was worthless junk, threw it down, and crushed it under his foot. The pendant shattered. The small locket attached to it shattered too. Kai could only stare. That had been the last piece of his family left in the world. Bria still was not finished. She joked that he might be hiding something under his last cloth. Kai stopped reacting. That only annoyed her. The sage joined in and told him to apologize for offending the noble hero's party. When he gave them nothing, Bria stamped between his family jewels. Pain tore through him as she ground her heel down and demanded an apology. Bria laughed. Frey called him filthy. Even Luke spoke as if this humiliation was only the result of Kai failing the party. Only Sylvie shouted for them to stop. Kai heard her voice from far away. Then the pain dragged him into darkness. When he woke, he was lying on a dusty road. That was how Kai was cast out of the hero party. There was nothing noble about it. Eris moved through the dark forest with one hand pressed to her torn wing. She was a demon. Even wounded, she still carried the presence of a high-ranking monster. Now she moved like prey. Not long earlier, the hero's party had stormed her dungeon, the Tower of Ruin. The tower was filled with evil mist that should have slowed humans, but they walked through it without hesitation. Eris had prepared layered traps meant to kill anyone careless enough to remove the first trigger. A single thief dismantled all of them. Then her monsters fell. Even so, the party reached the rooftop. Eris ruled the Tower of Ruin and held a high seat in the Demon King's army. At first, she still believed she could win. On the open rooftop, she used the sky, her wings, and distance to keep the party pinned down. Then, the thief threw a strange web. She ignored it because human status attacks meant little to demons, but the white sticky web wrapped around her wings, dragged her to the rooftop, and turned the battle into a 1-against-6 fight on the ground. From there, the fight tilted. The hero made a reckless charge, and Eris blasted him with dark fire. For a moment, the party almost broke. Then, the thief moved. His body flashed red, and he crossed the distance in a heartbeat. Eris twisted away from a killing blow, but his dagger still tore through her wing with a slash far too sharp for a scout-class fighter. She had to give up on finishing the hero. She forced open her damaged wings and jumped from the rooftop. As she fled, she heard the hero shouting in rage, ordering the thief to stop her from escaping. After that, everything blurred. She crashed into the forest below the tower. The wound in her wing closed just enough to stop the worst bleeding, but it swelled and burned. Normally she could hide her wings, but the damage was too severe. Then the fever hit. Her body turned heavy. Chills ran through her, while her head burned. She could not tell if it was poison, sickness, or something from the wound. Half blind and half lost, she wandered through the forest, afraid the hero's party was still hunting her. Eventually the trees thinned, and a human road appeared ahead. For a human, that would have meant safety. For a demon in this condition, it meant death. Panic drove Eris toward the other side of the road, but fear of the hero behind her dulled her senses. She noticed nothing until one of the men called out. 5 bandits stood in front of her. 2 more were moving through the trees on each side to cut off her escape. Eris clenched her teeth and tried to gather the little magic she had left. Her vision swayed. The bandit leader saw how weak she was at once. With a filthy smile, he offered to spare her if she stopped resisting and went with him. Eris could never read human faces well, but greed and lust needed no explanation. His men spoke openly about what they wanted to do to her. Some joked about breaking her limbs and horns first, so she could not fight back. Eris had climbed from the bottom of the Demon King's army to a high seat through sheer effort. Ending here, in the hands of road thieves, felt too cruel to accept. If she had to die, she would rather have died to a real hero, not that fool from the tower, a true hero, a human even a demon could respect. The leader stepped close, grabbed her chin, slid a knife into the front of her outfit, and began to cut the fabric. A thick red thorn burst through his palm. The red thorn was Kai's skill. The bandit leader screamed and stumbled back, clutching his ruined hand. The others turned toward the bushes and shot arrows at once. Kai stepped out and caught the arrows with his fingertips. The bandits froze. A short while earlier, Kai had been dumped on the road with nothing. Then he ran into this. He had no special reason to save a demon. Eris had been his enemy on the Tower of Ruin, but he had no intention of standing by while scum like this dragged anyone down. The bandits attacked together. Kai moved first. He drove a fist into one man's stomach, crushed another man's neck with his elbow, and kicked a third man under the jaw. Those with blades only died faster. Only the leader remained. He survived because he caught Eris from behind and pressed a knife to her throat. Eris barely reacted. Fever burned across her face. Kai clicked his tongue. A demon who had nearly broken the hero's party had been reduced to a roadside hostage. The leader threatened him with her life. Kai glanced down at his own body first. He had no armor, no money, and almost no clothing. The threat meant nothing to him. Then the bandit tried to hide behind religion and human hatred of demons. Kai saw through it. The man had already admitted he did not care about the war. He only wanted what was in front of him. Kai raised one hand and used his skill again. The red spike pierced the bandit leader through the right eye and drove deep into his head. He collapsed at once. Eris fell with him. Kai used flash step and caught her before she hit the ground. She was burning hot. For a moment, he looked down at the demon in his arms and wondered what he was doing. Just a little earlier, he had tried to kill her, but his feelings had shifted. This enemy had fought with pride. That alone placed her far above the people who had called themselves his allies. He laid her down carefully and checked the road. Evening cold was moving through the trees. Kai could resist freezing, but he had no interest in spending the night half naked, so he searched the corpses. He took the clothes and a few usable weapons from the corpses, just enough to keep moving. Then he returned to Eris. Her fever had not eased. Kai touched her forehead. The heat was real. He had wounded her wing on the tower, but he had not used any status effect that should have worked on a demon. Most of his tools should have failed against her kind, aside from special tools like the sticky web. So this fever came from something else, maybe infection or illness from the wound. He only hoped it was not contagious. Kai stood and walked to the one bandit he had kept alive. This one only survived to answer questions. The man was a broken wreck, but hatred still showed in his eyes when Kai dragged him up by the collar. Kai felt no pity. Thieves who robbed and killed others had no right to complain when death found them. Kai hated thieves. The bandit tried to hold out. Kai stabbed a knife through his hand. When that still was not enough, he used Medusa Eye. The bandit froze in place. Then Kai released the effect, and terror shattered the man's last resistance. He confessed everything. Their gang controlled this stretch of land, with 15 men left in a hideout inside an old fort between 2 western mountains. The deeper part had turned into a dungeon, but the outer walls were still usable. At the end, the man offered a secret entrance in exchange for his life. Kai heard the lie immediately. He silenced the man and wiped the blade on the corpse. Then he looked back at the feverish demon woman on the road. For now, there was only one choice. He would take her to the thieves' stronghold first. While Kai carried the wounded demon through the forest, the party that abandoned him was already leaving with the reward for clearing the Tower of Ruin. Rick was in a fine mood. The reward had been large. He wore the same twisted smile openly. Sylvie was the only one who could not share it. After walking in silence for a while, she finally asked the question weighing on her. They had taken payment for killing the demon, but the demon had escaped. Bria dismissed it. Reporting the job as finished kept the town calm, secured the reward, and saved them from wasting time searching for a demon that might already be dead. Even if the demon survived and attacked people later, Bria saw no problem. Dead witnesses would not expose a false report. Sylvie went pale. She was still young, but the Church of Raiden had sent her to the hero's party because she was one of its best priestesses. She was timid, too careful, and always watched stronger people before speaking. Bria had always found that kind of honesty irritating. She repeated that there had been no real choice. Rick agreed. Frey said a few deaths meant nothing beside the larger goal. Only Sylvie looked sick. She lowered her head and swallowed her protest. The road they walked now was painfully familiar. Kai had been thrown out around this same stretch the day before. Sylvie remembered his face, the other's cruelty, and how she had done nothing. She quietly said that traveling would be harder now that Kai was gone. The others looked at her as if she had said something strange. Luke answered first. Rick could already open treasure chests with magic. A new sage would join them in the next town. More attack power would only make the party stronger, Bria agreed. In her eyes, they had simply cut off dead weight. Luke stood at the center of the party so completely that even older members followed him. He had been named hero at 15, and he had talent with both sword and magic. He also had the face and manners to win people. Kings, ministers, and queens welcomed him. He was already politically engaged to a princess from a great kingdom. Sylvie had once been shaken just by meeting his eyes. Now she saw him differently. She had seen him meeting Frey in secret at night, despite that engagement. Since then, she had started noticing how well he used his calm face and kind tone. Hearing him dismiss Kai so easily made the rest clear. They truly believed throwing Kai away had been the right choice. That realization hit her hard. As rear support, Sylvie had seen Kai's work more clearly than the others. Luke and Bria fought in front. Rick and Frey focused on attack. Kai watched everything behind them. He read the flow of battle, covered mistakes, handled surprises, and stabilized the field with tools, timing, and fast judgment. He did the same on the road. He checked terrain, noticed danger early, and removed problems before anyone else even saw them. Sylvie had assumed the others understood that. Now she realized they never had. That was why they could throw him away so easily. Kai had not just been useful, he had carried the uncertain parts of every battle and every journey. Sylvie had never been the kind of person who acted first, and now the one person who had always handled the unseen danger was gone. Kai reached the thieves' stronghold with the demon woman still in his arms. The place matched the bandits' words. Watchmen stood in the towers, and the fort was better guarded than he had expected. He looked down at her. The fever still had not broken. He had been using cleanse on her whenever he could. Each time it helped for a moment, then the fever returned. That told him enough. Cleanse did not truly heal. It only erased active effects. If it was easing her sickness, then the cause was unnatural. A strong purification spell might have cured her, but he had no way to carry a demon into a church branch and ask for help. That left one other option. If the fort really connected to a dungeon, then what he needed might be inside. Kai hid her inside a hollow tree, covered her well enough to hide her shape, then circled the fort through the dark. The watchmen were alert only in the laziest sense. He reached the ditch unseen, used wall transparent, and checked inside. Most of the thieves were gathered in the fort. Some were asleep. Some were playing cards. 3 were still on watch. For once, the dying bandit had told the truth. Kai used a movement skill to reach the wall, but landed harder than he wanted. One guard heard the sound and leaned out. Kai answered by driving a thorn through the man's throat. The body crashed below. Shouts spread through the fort. The thieves rushed toward the gatehouse instead of fleeing. That suited him. Kai stepped into the firelight. The first thief saw him and shouted. More men crowded into the yard below. Kai exhaled once and used storm breath. A freezing storm crashed into the yard. Frost covered the walls, the ground, and the men caught in the blast. When it ended, the thieves had become nothing but ice statues. He moved and killed the remaining lookouts, one by one. Kai lowered the drawbridge from inside and returned to the hollow tree. The demon woman was still breathing in weak, half-conscious bursts. He carried her inside, found the cleanest bed in the fort, and laid her down. Then he searched the thieves' things until he found usable clothes and gear for himself. Then he moved deeper into the fort. At the rear of the fort, inside what had once been a church chapel, he found a black vortex where the altar used to stand, a dungeon gate. Kai stepped into it without hesitation. When the demon woman finally woke, Kai was already in the room, resting against the wall. If she attacked the moment she opened her eyes, he wanted space to move. She recognized him at once. Her body tensed, her eyes sharpened. Kai saw enough to know the truth. The sickness was gone. The spirit water from the dungeon's healing spring had worked. She did not thank him. Instead, she stared at him and made it clear she remembered exactly who he was, the thief from the hero's party, the one who broke her traps, shut down her monsters, trapped her wings, and cut her when she nearly killed the hero. Kai admitted it. Then she noticed something stranger. They could understand each other. That should not have been possible. Until now, every demon he had fought sounded like they were speaking some unknown tongue. She told him the truth. The Raiden god's blessing on heroes, and those tied to them, was also a curse. It planted hatred toward demons and cut them off from demon speech. Kai went still. That meant only one thing. He was no longer counted among the hero's companions. Then she asked the obvious question. If that was true, why had he helped her? Kai did not answer right away. He first told her where they were and what had happened. This was the old fort the thieves had been using. The men who attacked her were dead. That only made her more suspicious. Why would a human kill humans for a demon? Kai answered sharply that those thieves were not truly his people. She pushed back. In her eyes, heroes were not much better. Humans hurt others when it suited them, then wrapped it in noble words. Kai answered that demons and the Demon King threatened humanity first. She said demons would tell the story the other way around. Neither convinced the other. Then she asked again why he had saved her. He answered that it had been impulse. He could not stand the thought of men like that dragging her down and ruining her last moments. She reminded him what kind of enemy she was. She had used the Tower of Ruin to spread miasma and weaken the nearby human lands. Kai had no clean answer to that. Then, she gave him a cruel guess. Maybe he had saved her because he wanted her body for himself instead of letting the thieves have her way. Kai rejected that at once. To his surprise, she looked more puzzled than offended. She said that kind of thinking was common among humans. Then she added that the sage in Kai's old party had looked at her that way during the battle. Kai could believe that. That thought led to Sylvie, then to the pendant, then to the last piece of his family he had lost. His face changed, and Eris caught it at once. She said there had to be more behind his break with the party. Kai gave her the simple version. They had judged him low in combat value and thrown him away. Eris did not accept that as the whole truth. From her point of view, he had been the most dangerous person in the battle at the tower. The hero had been flashy. Kai had been the one who actually cornered her. Kai tried to brush that off. He said he was only versatile, not powerful. Eris still was not satisfied. A normal master thief should not have had the skills he used. The web that trapped her wings. The status effects that hit monsters that should have resisted them. None of it fit. Kai let out a slow breath. Before he explained, he asked her name. She gave her full title in the Demon King's army, then shortened it herself, Eris. She added that the title might not belong to her much longer. Failing to hold the Tower of Ruin could cost her rank, if her own side did not kill her first. Kai said that sounded harsh. Eris said the demon army ran on power. After that, Kai explained himself. His status looked decent until it was compared to Luke. As a master thief, his only real edge was dexterity. His level had stopped at 69, and he lacked the raw power needed for long dungeon fights. That was why the others came to see him as baggage. Eris said that still did not explain what she had seen. Kai admitted she was right. He was not a normal master thief. The star beside his class and skill changed everything. A normal steal took items. His version stole skills. When it worked, the target lost that skill forever, and Kai gained it as his own. That was how he could use abilities from monsters and other classes. Eris could not hide her shock. Even for her, that sounded absurd. Kai only gave a tired shrug and explained a few of the more important skills. The red thorn came from a desert monster. The web that trapped her wings came from a killer tarantula. The rest were much the same. Cold resistance from one slime. A freezing storm from a frost dragon. He had gathered them over years of fighting. The more Eris heard, the clearer the truth became. Kai could do almost anything, but never in the clean way a true frontline fighter could. Every trick had limits. He was terrifying when the field suited him, and awkward when it did not. Kai ended the explanation there, sat on the floor, opened his collar, and bared his neck. He told her she could kill him now. Eris stared at him in disbelief. None of this made sense. Kai admitted he no longer understood his own choice. When Eris asked whether he did not hate the hero party more, Kai finally told her the truth. Being expelled was not the part he could never forgive. What came after was, as a child, he had come home and found his family slaughtered. The one who did it was the Demon King. After that, Kai lost everything and survived in the streets by stealing. The only thing he had left from his old life was a family photo inside the pendant he always carried. Rick had crushed it. Kai searched for it after waking on the road. He searched again after killing the bandits. It was gone. So was the photo. That was when his hatred changed. Until then, all of it had been aimed at the Demon King. Now it also pointed at Luke and the others. Then he admitted, every time he used Steel Star, it hurt. It felt like his body and mind were being forced to carry things that did not belong there. He had endured it because revenge kept him moving. But even that was starting to crack. He still wanted the Demon King dead. He still wanted the hero party ruined. But beyond that, the whole world had started to disgust him. He had saved Eris because he no longer had the strength to live for revenge alone. Eris refused. She would not kill the one who saved her. Then she told him her own story. She was the child of a demon woman and a human man. After her parents were killed, she was locked away and treated as filth. When she finally gained freedom, she entered the Demon King's army because it was the only path left. She survived through study, traps, and planning. Little by little, she climbed upward and built the Tower of Ruin with her own hands. All of that effort had gone into that tower, and the man who helped destroy it was now sitting in front of her, asking for death like a coward. Kai had no answer, so Eris gave him. If revenge still mattered to him, he should join her. For a moment, Kai thought he had heard wrong. Eris explained that the moment he was cut off from the hero's party, he also lost the god's bond tied to that side. If he still wanted power, the demon side was now the fastest path left to him. Kai pointed out that Eris had failed too. Her place in the Demon King's army had to be hanging by a thread. Eris said that could still be fixed. If she killed the hero party that destroyed her tower and brought back proof, her standing would recover. Kai then said Luke was not his only target. He still meant to reach the Demon King himself. Eris did not flinch. In Demon Lands, she said even the Demon King ruled only as long as strength allowed it. If someone stronger took the throne, that became the new order. Eris did not just want to survive, she wanted the Demon King gone. She hated the war, the bloodline pride, and the rotten world built on force and hypocrisy. One day, then he should push back. She would help him get revenge if he joined her. Something inside Kai loosened. He laughed once, looked at Eris, and agreed. If the world was this filthy, then the two of them would tear through it together. Far away, Sylvie sat alone in her room, with the broken pieces of Kai's locket spread across her desk. She had picked them up from the roadside, and had been trying to restore them in secret ever since. She already knew the worst part. The shell might be repaired, but the photo inside never could. Still, she kept trying, because of guilt. Kai had protected her again and again, without asking for anything. When the time came to return even a small part of that, she did nothing. She had feared Luke, Rick, Bria, and Frey more than what they were becoming. Yet Kai, who looked the least noble, had been the only one with an honest heart. She apologized to the empty room and kept using restoration magic through her tears. After clearing the Tower of Ruin, Luke and his A-rank party left and headed for Nesca. At the Church of Raiden, they accepted a new dungeon request. The branch chief praised them for clearing a miasma-filled tower and said they were already close to S rank. Everyone looked pleased. Sylvie only stood there, filled with guilt. Their new member was already waiting. She was a sage. In her early 20s, she introduced herself as Alice. She looked polished, with carefully kept shoulder-length hair curled at the ends. Luke introduced the new formation. He and Bria would stay on the front line. Rick and Alice would handle the middle. Sylvie would remain in the rear, and Frey would shift into flexible support. Alice praised the setup, and Luke liked hearing it. Rick liked something else. His eyes were already roaming over Alice's body, while Frey watched Luke warm to her attention and turned colder by the minute. Sylvie noticed that Alice was doing more than being polite. She was securing her place in the party as quickly as possible. Seeing that, Sylvie had one bad thought. If someone else was going to be pushed aside the way Kai had been, Frey might be next. The party left Nesca that same day and reached the troll cave the next morning. On the way there, they tested the new formation against wandering monsters. The results looked strong. Then he led the party into the troll cave with full confidence. Sylvie always hated entering dungeons. The troll cave was already dangerous enough that weaker monsters had started spilling outside, but an A-rank party still should have handled it. At first, the new formation even looked strong. The two sages blasted apart the first troll groups near the entrance. Bria liked the faster pace. Rick tried to act close with Alice, but she slipped away from him and praised Luke instead. Luke enjoyed that more than he should have. Then, he made the first mistake. A thin wire was stretched across the wet stone floor. Luke stepped into it. An arrow shot out at once. He bent back and cut it in one smooth motion. The move was impressive. The problem came right after. Alice calmly asked if the party had no scout. Luke quickly said Rick could detect traps and open treasure chests. Alice asked, if that was true, then why had no one been checking for traps now? Luke stumbled through an excuse and told Rick to start doing it properly. Rick cast his detection spell. Red lights appeared across the cave, marking wires, jaw traps, and false floor circles. He grumbled at how many there were. Alice looked surprised. Trolls using traps was common knowledge. Everyone should have known that before entering a troll dungeon. Rick laughed it off and said they had been dealing with stronger enemies lately. Alice told them to be careful. She had only just joined and still did not know the party's movements well enough to react cleanly to sudden trouble. Then Frey snapped at Alice and told her to stop acting like she understood the party better than its own members. Alice gave a flat apology, then asked who would disarm the traps now that they had been found. Luke froze. He had only planned for chest opening and trap detection, never for trap removal. In the end, he told Frey to do it. Frey accepted. She had high dexterity, and simple traps were within her reach. That was enough to move forward. Frey disarmed trap after trap, while Luke praised her for it. Alice sounded impressed too, and Frey clearly relaxed under that praise. Sylvie only grew more uneasy. Frey crouched at another wire trap that looked almost the same as the first one, but this one had a thinner line running from the release mechanism toward the marked pitfall below. Sylvie looked up and saw a small hole in the ceiling. She remembered Kai's rule for layered traps. Block the hidden outlet above first, then deal with the obvious mechanism. Frey did not notice that. She reached for the visible line. Sylvie shouted, before she could stop herself. Frey flinched and cut the wrong line. A spear shot up from the false pit, barely missed her face, and slammed into the ceiling. Rick's spell had marked the surface trap, but not the device buried below. The others were still trying to understand what had happened when Sylvie shouted again. The real danger had not even started yet. She pointed to the small hole in the ceiling. It was a sound tube. The spear launch had sent noise through it. The trap had not only tried to kill them, it had also signaled the trolls. As the others stared, Sylvie forced herself to think. She tried to track the route the way Kai had taught her, but the truth hit before she could finish. No one had been mapping at all. Then, troll cries rose from both front and rear. Alice stared in disbelief when she heard that no one had been mapping. She had assumed Sylvie or Frey was doing it from the back line. Sylvie explained that she was already busy maintaining the holy barrier against miasma. Frey had been forced onto trap work she was never trained for. Rick could detect traps, but he could not keep a mapping spell active at the same time. Alice grabbed Sylvie in panic and demanded to know how the party had ended up like this. Luke cut her off. There was no time. They had to break through either the front or the rear. Sylvie warned him that the forward route still held traps. Luke said the trolls would trigger them first. Sylvie shut that down. Trolls were, like most dungeon monsters, they had a skill that let them ignore traps meant for intruders. Luke clearly did not want Kai's lessons brought up again, but there was no room left for pride. The troll cries were already getting louder, and the numbers sounded far worse than anything they had fought on the road. Sylvie finally understood why the reward had been so high. Luke chose the rear as the better route and started giving orders. Bria and Rick would hold one side. Luke and Alice would force open the other. Frey would support whichever side needed her most. Sylvie would keep everyone alive. Then Sylvie gave another warning. They could not spread too far away from her. Luke stared at her in disbelief. That had never been a problem before. Sylvie almost said why. Before Kai was expelled, part of the burden of resisting miasma had quietly been taken off her shoulders. Now that support was gone. Fear stopped her again. So she only said that healing both sides at once was already pushing her limit. If the party spread too wide, she would not have room for strengthening magic or proper healing. That hesitation cost them. By the time Sylvie forced her mind back into the battle, both sides had already met the trolls. Bria was the first to realize something was wrong. The trolls were stronger than they should have been. Her massive sword should have overwhelmed creatures like this. Instead, the trolls kept twisting around her attacks with slow, ugly movements that somehow matched her timing perfectly. They moved as if they knew where her blade would land before it came down. Rick fired water blast from behind her. It killed only one. The others held their ground. Frey fired a rapid chain of arrows next. The trolls either ducked or knocked them aside. Sylvie understood that these were variant trolls. The damp cave had likely given them water resistance. The other skill was worse. They could read incoming physical attacks. Luke turned in frustration. A troll's club crashed toward him. He barely caught it with his sword, and another troll moved in from the side while his weapon was pinned. Frey saved him with an arrow through the attacker's eye. Then she shouted at him to stop panicking and think of a way out. So Sylvie forced herself to speak clearly. The troll's reading skill only worked against one opponent at a time. If they were locked onto Luke or Bria, then an attack from another angle could still hit. Frey took control of that role. She told Luke and Bria to stop trying to kill everything themselves. Their job was to hold the trolls' focus. They listened. Luke and Bria started drawing in multiple trolls at once, forcing the monsters to read only them. The instant that happened, Frey attacked from outside that focus. She turned from front to back and back again, dropping trolls with quick, clean shots. The monsters could no longer read in time. At the same time, Sylvie warned Rick and Alice to stop using water magic. The cave was clearly favoring the trolls against it. Rick switched to rock bullet. Alice answered with lightning. Those spells worked far better. Several trolls fell at once, but the pressure did not break. Every troll they killed seemed to be replaced by another one coming from deeper in the cave. They kept coming from both sides, without end. Rick was the first to say what everyone knew. If this kept going, he and Alice would run out of MP before the battle ended. Once the panic passed, Luke finally started acting like a hero again. He gave clear orders. Bria would hold one side with her wall magic. Everyone else would focus on Luke's side and break through the rear. If they could force open one direction, they might still escape. Bria used defensive magic. A huge wall of light formed in front of her and moved with her body. It blocked the trolls from rushing through and cut most of the damage coming her way. Sylvie shifted almost all her attention to Luke's side. At the same time, she started counting in her head. Kai had once told her to count buff durations instead of trusting instinct. If she knew exactly how long the magic wall would last, she could stop worrying about Bria for a few seconds and pour everything into the breakthrough. She stacked attack and defense magic on Luke. Then Luke cast clock acceleration. Luke and Frey moved faster. Rick and Alice recovered their casting speed sooner between spells. Sylvie kept counting. Clock acceleration would end slightly before her defensive wall. That gave them only a narrow window. It worked. On Luke's side, the trolls began falling much faster. Luke, Frey, Rick, and Alice forced their way back to the last four-way intersection they had passed. The next problem appeared. The route they wanted was gone. The passage ahead had collapsed. The right side route had collapsed too. Both were sealed by rubble. Trolls alone should not have been able to do that. That left only the left path, which was the worst option. It was unexplored and completely unchecked. Almost at the same moment, Clock acceleration ended. 3 seconds later, the defensive wall ended too. The trolls pressing Bria regained full movement. One club smashed into her left arm before she could fully reset. She jumped back towards Sylvie, and Sylvie answered with first aid and then physical shield. Bria grinned through the pain, got both hands back on her sword, and resumed fighting. By then, she had also started figuring out the troll's reading skill. A few simple feints were enough to break their timing. Luke made the call. There was no way back, and no safe route left. The party had to force the left path and gamble on speed. He used Gale Tornado to blast open the corridor ahead. The green storm tore through the trolls, filling that route, and knocked them aside long enough to open a line. Then he ran. Rick, Frey, and Alice followed at once. All of them tried to place their feet exactly where Luke had stepped, because one wrong step could trigger a trap he had narrowly avoided. Sylvie hesitated only once. She knew how reckless this was. Running full speed through an unscouted dungeon path was nearly certain death, but if she fell behind, no one would keep the party alive, so she ran too. Her legs were slower than the others. Her breathing turned ragged almost at once. She could already hear fresh trolls clashing with Luke's group farther ahead. If she did not catch up, someone could fall before she ever reached them. Then Bria came up behind her. Bria was trying to catch the others too, and Sylvie was in the way. Without warning, Bria shoved her hard between the shoulders. The force sent Sylvie flying forward before she understood what had happened. It was not just a pit trap, it was the trigger for something larger. She crashed through the false surface. The moment she landed, she shouted for the others to run. Cracks shot out from the pit in every direction. They spread beneath all the members. Then the entire area collapsed. Sylvie woke with sand against her face and hands. For a moment, she thought she was still falling. Then the memory came back, and she pushed herself up. She was inside a huge dome-shaped cavern. Fine sand covered the ground and sloped down toward the center like a giant bowl. The collapse had dropped them into an antlion nest. Luke called to her from below. He stood near the center of the basin with a dead hell antlion at his feet. He explained that after the collapse, everyone else had blacked out. He was the only one who stayed conscious, and he killed it before it could finish them off. Then he told Sylvie to help find the others. They dug through the sand and found the rest soon enough. None were dead. Sylvie healed them, and one by one they woke. Once everyone gathered in one corner of the cavern, the mood turned ugly. They checked their weapons and armor first. Nobody had lost their gear in the fall. That should have been good news. Instead, it only made the earlier failures look even worse. Alice stood up and demanded an explanation. Why had an A-rank hero party entered a dungeon with no proper scout? Who was Kai? And why did everyone go stiff whenever his name came up? Frey tried to turn it back on her first. She said Alice, joining under those conditions, was suspicious too. A capable sage wandering around without a party was not normal. Alice admitted that, in her last party, the men started fighting over her. She admitted she had encouraged that more than she should have, because it was easier in the short term than letting the group break apart openly. In the end, that party's hero threw her out because her presence kept the team unstable. Frey called her rotten. Alice did not deny it. Then she said it was this party's turn to talk. Luke tried to stop Sylvie from speaking. Alice cut him off. Party members left all the time. Normally, it was handled through discussion and proper separation pay. If that was all this had been, nobody would be acting like this. That was when Sylvie finally said that Kai had not left by agreement. They expelled him without warning. They stripped his gear. They left him on a monster road with nothing. Alice stared at her in shock. She asked why. Sylvie answered that Luke had decided Kai was no longer useful in battle. Alice asked directly if they had thrown Kai out just to avoid paying him. Luke denied it, but even he did not sound convincing. Alice explained what a hero's expulsion really meant. Once a hero formally threw someone out, every major party would see that person differently. Unless there was some extreme reason, no serious hero party would take them in. It did not just remove someone from one team, it could ruin their whole future. Luke seemed not to have understood that. Rick had. That became clear the moment Alice looked at him. He lost his temper at once. He complained about money. He complained that Kai had been dead weight. He complained that bringing Alice in had cost a lot. Then his words turned uglier, as if the gold spent to recruit a pretty woman should have bought him more than her magic. Even Alice looked stunned for a second. Then her face hardened with disgust. She turned back to Luke and asked if he really meant to stand beside that kind of thinking. Luke tried to hide behind the same excuse again. Kai had not been useful anyway. Alice rejected that too. From everything she had already seen in this dungeon, the truth looked obvious. Kai might not have been the strongest attacker, but he had clearly been a first-rate scout. He had been so reliable that the rest of them stopped even noticing the work he was doing. Luke finally snapped. He declared that his judgment was absolute. It was his party. One man leaving meant nothing. He was the chosen hero. This disaster was only another trial placed before him by the Raiden god, and he would turn it into proof that he deserved S rank. Still burning with that pride, he drew his sword and pointed it at a crack in the rock wall where another tunnel continued. He said they would leave through there, or maybe clear the boss first if needed. Then he started walking. The others argued and told him to stop, but all of them followed anyway. They had no real choice. A party like this could not survive without its hero, and Luke knew that perfectly well. In the end, The others talked Luke out of trying to clear the whole dungeon. They only wanted to escape, so the party moved again. Sylvie also gave them the only direction. The dungeon had been sloping downward ever since they entered, so in theory, climbing upward should bring them closer to the exit. After a while, Luke asked why they still had not found a recovery spring. Alice explained that recovery springs did not appear in fixed places. They formed where the Raiden god's power entered the dungeon, so finding one required accurate pacing, mapping, and calculation. Nobody had anything to say to that. They only kept walking. Their real problem now was MP. Rick said he had about a third left. Alice answered that she had 94. Luke asked how she could know that so exactly. Alice stared back and asked how he could not. Sylvie thought of Kai again. He used to track everyone's MP with tiny error and pace the party around it. Later, Sylvie suddenly stopped. The area looked familiar. The others saw nothing. She saw a hanging stone shape above and a trap opening in the floor. This was the place where Frey had mishandled the layered trap and the troll ambush had begun. Sylvie told them to quietly step back, return to the last four-way split, and take the left path. If her memory was right, that route should move them in a better direction. They followed. They met more trolls along the way. Small groups were manageable. Bigger groups still forced them to spend magic they could not spare. The farther they went, the more strained Rick and Alice became. Rick eventually admitted he was down to about a fifth. Alice said she had dropped below 50. Then they found another four-way intersection. Relief spread through the group. They kept climbing through unfamiliar passages while their magic drained away. Every new route brought more traps, more trolls, and more proof that none of them knew how to handle a dungeon without Kai. Alice no longer bothered charming Rick. She no longer acted warm toward Luke either. Everything polite about her now felt thin. That distraction almost killed Sylvie. Heavy impacts sounded above the ceiling. Luke shouted for her to move toward him, not back. She ran. The ceiling crashed down exactly where she had been standing. When the dust cleared, a giant shape stood on top of the rubble. It was a troll, but far larger than the others. It held a massive two-handed mace, and when it roared, the whole passage shook. A boss troll. Rick warned everyone not to even think about a long fight. Their MP was too low. Bria asked Sylvie how far the exit should be. Sylvie said it should not be much farther now. That decided it. They would run. Bria charged first and took the boss troll for herself. She stayed just outside the full swing of its mace, let it smash walls and floor, then slipped in and cut its arm. The wound was shallow, but it kept the monster's focus on her for a moment. So while Bria held it, the others ran. Rick used trap detection as they moved. There was no time for Frey to disarm everything, so Alice blasted whatever traps blocked the path. It burned through her remaining MP, but there was no choice. Then another large group of trolls blocked the tunnel ahead. Luke and Frey had to handle them mostly on their own. The sages could not afford to waste the last of their power yet. Behind them, Bria shouted that she could not hold much longer. Then more trolls appeared in front. The party forced onward anyway, and finally reached another four-way split. Sylvie knew it. This was the second major split from the way in. She told Luke to turn right. If they took that route, the exit should be after one more stretch and one final junction. Luke drove himself into the middle of the intersection and held back the trolls rushing from the other sides. He forced open the right path through pure skill. Then Alice used Snowstorm. Large chunks of ice smashed bodies apart. Then Alice called for Luke. Luke called for Bria. Bria used a stun strike to stop the boss troll for only a heartbeat, then broke away and ran. Luke slipped back and joined the others. Now all six had turned right. If they could just keep running, they would be close. But the danger had not eased. The boss troll was still behind them, smashing forward through the tunnel. More trolls were already filling the way ahead. Luke had no MP left for hero magic. Alice had enough for one more real spell. Luke told her to use it on the front. Alice fired Thunderbolt and opened the path one last time. After that, they ran in a narrow line. Luke first, then Frey, then Rick, then Alice, then Sylvie. Bria stayed at the rear, sometimes moving backward so she could keep the boss troll in sight. At last, they saw the final four-way split ahead. Hope returned for one brief moment. Then everything started to fail at once. Frey ran out of arrows and had to draw a short blade. Luke was already fighting without hero magic. Rick and Alice were both dry. Their kill speed dropped sharply. The front could still move, but too slowly. The rear could not keep the boss troll back forever. Bria used every fighter skill she still had. Then even those ran out. Only cooldown remained. The boss troll kept coming anyway. Bria was pushed all the way back toward the middle of the group, almost into Sylvie. Everyone's face changed. Fear was now completely visible. Everyone except Rick. He suddenly said he had a plan. Luke demanded to know what it was. Rick answered by casting Glacier Spear straight into Alice. The ice lance pierced her leg and pinned her to the ground. Freezing magic spread across the floor and locked her lower body in place. For a second, nobody moved. Then Alice screamed. Rick laughed. He had lied about his remaining MP. He had saved this cast on purpose. Alice knew too much now. If she got out alive, she would report everything to the church, so she had to die here. Better still, she could die holding the monsters back for the rest of them. Luke shouted at him. Rick shouted back that if Alice lived, Luke could lose his standing as a hero. That was all that mattered now. Sylvie understood another part of it then. Bria had not been pushed back by mistake. She had been drawing the boss troll closer on purpose. The trap was already set. Rick then cast Photon Ray and wiped out the trolls in front of the group. At the same time, Bria activated the defensive wall again. This time, the wall of light did not appear only in front of the boss troll. It rose between Alice and the rest of the party. Bria grabbed Sylvie by the back of her robe and started dragging her away. Luke still hesitated for one moment. Alice begged him with everything she had left. She swore she would stay quiet. She swore she would do anything if he saved her. Luke looked at her, flinched, and chose himself. He blamed her for asking too many questions and ran. Frey followed without a word. She did look back once. What showed in her eyes was tangled and ugly. Guilt was there. Sylvie struggled against Bria's grip and demanded to know if this had been the plan from the start. Bria stopped, yanked Sylvie close, and threw the truth in her face. Sylvie had no right to act innocent now. The moment she stood there and let Kai be stripped and abandoned, she became the same as the rest of them. She was already stained, already guilty, and already part of it. The words hit exactly where Sylvie was weakest. For a moment, she froze. Then something finally changed. She tore herself free and said she would not add one more sin to the pile. She would not abandon someone again. Bria stared at her, then let go. She said if Sylvie wanted to stay, then stay, and Bria left. Rick shouted after her in surprise. Bria ignored him and kept running. He exploded into another filthy rant about women and how they should obey if men paid enough. Nobody answered him. They were too busy fleeing. Luke, Rick, Frey, and Bria used the trolls ahead as cover and ran for the exit. Sylvie stayed behind. Sylvie ran to Alice at once. Alice called her a fool. Sylvie cast Dispel and broke the ice around Alice's legs. Alice thanked her, but her face already showed she knew there was no time left. The boss troll was getting closer. The defensive wall still slowed it, but only for a few more seconds. Sylvie had been counting buff times all day. Now, that habit only made things worse. She knew exactly how little time remained before the wall vanished. She reached for Alice again. Alice shoved her away instead and stepped in front of the boss troll. Then, she used a short-range transport spell. The world jumped. Sylvie found herself thrown outside the ring of trolls. Alice had hidden MP2. With her last act, she bought Sylvie one chance. She shouted at Sylvie to survive and expose them. Then the boss troll swung. Its club hit Alice from the side and smashed her into the wall. She dropped and did not move again. Sylvie broke. She screamed and wasted the chance Alice had handed her. Other trolls turned and rushed toward her as one brought down a flail, while Sylvie sat frozen on the ground with her eyes shut. The strike never landed. When Sylvie opened her eyes, the troll was already dead beside her. A red thorn was buried deep in the back of its head. The other trolls were locked in thick ice. Even the boss troll was frozen from the waist down, still struggling, and in front of all of them stood the one person Sylvie never expected to see again. Kai looked at her with cold, tired eyes. Then he asked if she had been abandoned too. Kai had expected anger when he saw her again. Instead, what came was duller. He still saw her as weak. He still knew her silence had helped destroy him. Then another voice came from behind him. Eris stepped past the frozen boss troll and joined him. Sylvie went pale the moment she saw her hair, horns, and calm face. She knew her immediately. This was the demon from the Tower of Ruin. Eris asked Kai why he had saved the girl. Kai said he had not meant to. His body had moved before he chose anything. Most of the frozen trolls would die soon anyway. As for the boss troll, it was more trouble than reward, so he used the random jump skill. The boss troll vanished in a flash and was thrown somewhere else inside the dungeon. Sylvie could barely follow any of it. She trembled and tried to speak. Kai cut through that first. He told her he already understood. She had been unable to stand against Luke and Rick, but she also understood what that weakness had caused. Sylvie lowered her eyes and admitted it. Eris watched the exchange with open disgust. In her eyes, Sylvie was exactly the kind of person who hid inside weakness and called that innocence. Kai did not defend Sylvie from that. Behind Eris, a large purple crystal floated in the air, the dungeon core. Kai and Eris had entered Troll Cave before Luke's party ever arrived. They had already reached the bottom, killed the true boss, and taken the core. The huge troll from before had only been a middle boss, meant to chase intruders into traps and strike through walls with its special skill. The real design of the cave had been worse than that. It was built to drain a party's magic on endless trolls first, then finish them deeper inside. Kai might have admired the design if he and Eris had not just destroyed it. They never expected Luke's party to arrive at the same time, so he stayed hidden and watched. He heard everything with land sonar. He heard the panic and the blame. He heard Alice being offered up. He heard Sylvie refuse to run. And after hearing all of it, Kai's opinion of Sylvie only hardened. She still looked the same to him, weak when it mattered, honest only after the damage was done. If she had truly wanted to stop what happened, she should have spoken when he was being thrown away. As the healer, her words would have carried weight than anyone else except Luke. She might not have won, but she should have spoken. Instead, she stayed silent until silence became unbearable. Now she looked ready to die, and she said so. If Kai wanted her dead, then he could have already killed her. Eris called that pathetic. Kai did not disagree. Instead, he stepped closer and gave Sylvie an order. She was to go back and tell Luke one thing. The Tower of Ruin was coming back. Sylvie looked up sharply. Then she asked, why was Kai standing beside a demon? Kai answered that he had chosen Eris's side. He had done it for revenge. Sylvie asked if that revenge was aimed at them. Kai told her not to think so small. He and Eris wanted to tear down the whole rotten world that had shaped heroes, demons, priests, and cowards into the same ugly mess. His former party was only part of that. Then he told her to leave before his mood changed. Eris then asked the obvious question. If Kai wanted revenge on Luke's party, why let Sylvie live? If he released her now, she might leave and never stand near them again. Kai said Alice had given Sylvie one final task before dying. Alice wanted her to live, go back, and expose them. But Kai did not believe Sylvie could do it. Eris said that was foolish. If a party had broken human law, reporting them should be simple. Kai shook his head. Luke's party had already lied to the church. If they had honestly admitted Eris escaped, they would have been forced to stay and hunt her through the forest. The fact that they were now in Troll Cave proved they had already reported the Tower of Ruin as cleared. If Sylvie reported them, the church would likely send them back to the restored tower to fix the disaster before deciding their punishment. If Sylvie stayed silent, the revival of the tower would still expose the lie and force the same result. Either way, Luke's party would be dragged back to the Tower of Ruin, and Sylvie would be caught in it too. Kai added one more point. Sylvie could try to run, but the Church of Raiden was everywhere. It was not only a religion, it was the force that held human lands together against monsters and demons. It tracked hero parties, judged their standing, and carried the authority of the Raiden god. A person who fled after knowing this much would not stay free for long. Then Kai said that Sylvie looked crushed by guilt, but that was only half true. She hated the pain more than she hated the wrong itself. She did not choose evil on purpose, but she could not openly condemn it either. That was why Luke and Rick found her so useful. One day, Kai said, someone like Rick might corner her with indecent intentions, and she would likely freeze there too. Sylvie called that cruel. Kai said it was simply true. Still, he admitted one thing had surprised him. He had not expected her to stay behind with Alice. Sylvie asked why, if he had been watching, he let the others escape. Kai answered that killing such a broken group would not satisfy him. He had already chosen where he wanted to crush them. The Tower of Ruins. What truly irritated him was that they nearly wiped themselves out before he could use them properly. He faced Sylvie one last time. She could do whatever she wanted now. Report them, stay silent, sink into guilt. It no longer mattered to him which road she took. What disappointed him was not that she had been weak once. It was that after everything he had taught her, she still had never learned to stand on her own feet. Then, he turned away. He told Eris it was time to go. After escaping Troll Cave, Luke and the others shut themselves inside his room at the inn. Luke, Rick, Bria, and Frey only traded dark looks and waited for someone else to speak first. Rick finally did. In his view, there was nothing left to debate. They had to give up on the request, report the failure to the church, and ask for new members. Luke rejected that. He did not want to report his failure or admit how badly things had gone. Rick shut that down. Without a healer, they were finished. They had lost Alice and Sylvie in one run. Even if they wanted to continue, they could not. Replacements for a party like theirs came through the church, Bria agreed. That was especially true for healers. Most priests were raised by the church. The few wandering ones outside that system usually came with trouble already attached. Luke kept searching for other options, like private contacts or taverns, hoping they could find someone themselves. Rick rejected all of it. The church controlled party recruitment for a reason. If a hero party tried too hard to avoid church mediation, it immediately looked suspicious. People would assume the party was hiding something. The church would notice later anyway. Luke had no answer, so the question changed. If they had to report, how would they report it? Rick answered that the safest story was to make the party look unlucky. Better to make it look like a failed run and a tragic accident. Bria agreed. A new member had joined. A disaster had followed. If Alice was blamed for the collapse and Sylvie died with her, suspicion might stay on simple incompetence. Rick said Sylvie's death would have solved another problem too. She had looked ready to crack under guilt sooner or later. He admitted he once saw some use in keeping Sylvie around for reasons that had nothing to do with healing, but Kai had taught her too much caution. She locked her door and layered protective magic every night. Bria laughed at him for being seen through that easily, so they went to see the branch chief. There, Luke performed grief. The act came easily. He described Alice as a brave new ally who had stayed behind so the others could survive. He spoke like a young hero crushed by the loss of a precious comrade. The branch chief believed him. When the old man asked whether Alice had at least proven useful before dying, Luke said without hesitation that she had saved all of them. That answer hit the branch chief hard. He lowered his head and quietly grieved for her. Then he began worrying about the next problem. A new healer would be difficult to arrange quickly. Luke and the others were about to discuss replacements when the office door opened without warning. The branch chief turned in anger first. The party turned in fear. Sylvie stood in the doorway. Then she said she would tell the truth. Luke moved before anyone else and lunged at her. Sylvie had prepared for this. Before entering the room, she had already set a ward that punished anyone who approached her with impure intent. She raised a divine barrier around herself, and he slammed into it and was thrown back across the room. Rick started casting at once. The branch chief stopped him with one sharp command. He asked her name. She answered clearly. Then he reminded her that he had just been told she was dead. He asked whether she had somehow survived after bravely staying behind with Alice. Sylvie said no. That report itself was false. She said the party had abandoned Alice as bait. She said Rick had pinned Alice to the ground with ice after her MP ran dry. Alice died. Sylvie survived only because a demon spared her. That alone shook the room, but she was not done. She then said the earlier report about the Tower of Ruin had also been false. The tower had been entered, but its master had escaped. Worse, the demon told her the tower would soon return. Bria called her a liar at once and demanded proof. Sylvie admitted she had none in her hands, but proof was already on its way. The demon side had taken a dungeon core from Troll Cave. If that was true, then the Tower of Ruin would revive soon enough, and the lie would expose itself on its own. The branch chief did not dismiss that. Instead, he noticed something else in Sylvie's words. She had said she could no longer take part in their evil. That meant there was more than one wrong here. Rick tried to shout her down. That was when Bria lost patience. She rushed Sylvie before anyone else could react. The branch chief bound her in holy light before she reached her. Church staff rushed in from the hall, and the branch chief gave direct orders. Luke, Rick, Bria, and Frey were to be detained at once. Luke almost reached for his sword. Rick stopped him. Frey supported staying calm. In her view, this could still be turned around. If they were questioned separately and answered steadily enough, Sylvie's word alone might not ruin them. So the church questioned them one by one. It went badly for their party. Sylvie's account stayed steady. The others did not line up nearly as well. Small gaps started opening between their versions. Then the final blow came the next day. The Tower of Ruin had returned. That proved the report false. The branch chief immediately moved towards stripping their party of its standing, but Sylvie opposed that. She insisted that they clear the restored tower themselves, taking responsibility for what they had done. The branch chief wanted harsher punishment, but politics made that difficult. In the end, the party was forced to take responsibility and return to the restored tower, with its rank reduced to C. The party turned on each other almost at once, then fell into bitter silence. Even then, the party still had a practical problem. No healer had been assigned to replace her. If they were being forced toward the Tower of Ruin again, then Sylvie had to go with them. There was no other workable answer. That only made the anger worse. Then Sylvie revealed one more thing. She had not told the church who restored the tower. She then told them that Kai had done it. That name hit the group like a spark in oil. All their fear, shame, and frustration found one target at once. The story twisted itself inside their heads almost immediately. Kai was no longer the man they had betrayed. He became the cause of everything, the root, the reason their lives were collapsing. Luke seized that version first. He declared that Kai was the true source of this disaster and that he would be dealt with. Sylvie said nothing, but the disgust on her face was plain. Kai and Eris waited in the master room of the restored Tower of Ruin. The room at the top was wide, warm, and shaped for a dungeon lord's comfort. Kai sat on the bed while Eris leaned against him and watched a crystal sphere. Their bond had deepened quickly after they joined hands, and neither of them denied it anymore. Eris tilted the crystal sphere so Kai could see. Inside, Luke's party was climbing through the tower again. It had a new scout. The boy in front was slim, dressed in black, and moved too sharply for a normal thief. His lower face was covered, and even his knife had been darkened. Kai watched him for a moment and gave his judgment. He was not a thief, he was an assassin. And not the clean kind trained for formal war either. More likely, he came from the darker side of human society. Eris asked how good he was. Kai said the boy was decent for his age. His basics were solid, but assassin skills were better for killing people than clearing dungeons. Against monsters and bosses, many of their best tricks failed. Against humans, those same tricks became deadly. Eris found that amusing. The Raiden god had made a class better suited for human killing than demon war. Kai said there was no point trying to make perfect sense of the gods. One thing was clear. If they had brought in an assassin instead of getting a real scout through the church, then the church had probably refused them proper support. The party must have found the boy through money, pressure, or one of Bria's uglier methods. Then Eris pointed out something else in the sphere. Sylvie was occasionally giving the assassin directions. Kai went quiet for a moment. Some of what he had taught her had stayed with her after all. Eris noticed the look on his face and smiled faintly. Kai said it changed very little. He and Eris had no plan to kill all of them deep inside the tower. That would have been too simple. They only needed the party worn down, HP lowered, MP drained. Most of all, They needed Luke to keep believing the tower could still be cleared if it pushed a little farther. After that, they got ready and moved to the rooftop. It sat outside the tower, open to the sky, and reached through a black vortex. That was why she had escaped before. When the battle turned against her, she had been able to leap from the outer roof and flee. Now Kai stood there beside Eris and waited. Soon the vortex opened. Luke came out first, then Bria, then the new assassin, then Frey, Rick, and Sylvie. All of them emerged armed and ready. Then they saw Kai standing beside Eris, and shock spread across their faces. Kai greeted them almost lightly. Luke answered with fury. In his eyes, Kai had sunk as low as a human could sink by standing beside a demon. Kai asked what punishment the church had actually given them. Since they were here, full expulsion clearly had not happened. Sylvie must have kept some truths from the church after all, because if she had not, their standing would likely be even worse. Luke tried to twist that into proof that Kai's expulsion had been right all along. Only someone rotten would ever have ended up here. Kai almost laughed. He decided there was no point dragging out the talk. He moved first. Medusa Eye locked Bria in place before the others fully reacted. In the same instant, a thorn punched through her thigh. Kai fired again, but Luke stepped in fast enough to knock the second shot aside. Rick answered with Glacier Spear. Kai caught the ice spell in one hand. It shattered harmlessly in his palm. That brief exchange already showed the shape of the battle. Luke's party had come in angry and prepared. Kai had come in knowing exactly what each of them could do. Luke rushed him next. Kai threw sticky web. Luke cut through it, but the slash still slowed him for a moment. That was enough. Kai used a copied spell. A spiraling green storm burst forward. Luke recognized Tornado too late. He had no choice but to brace and take it head on. Blades of wind tore across his body. The storm hit even harder because he never expected to see his own hero magic in Kai's hands. Behind him, the frozen Bria was clipped by the same attack and came away covered in fresh cuts. Rick stared in disbelief. Kai using stolen monster skills was one thing. Kai using hero magic was another. He shouted for Sylvie to dispel Bria's frozen state. She did. Kai had been waiting for that exact moment. Human spells, even without spoken words, still needed a build-up. Monster skills came instantly. Kai knew Sylvie's rhythm well enough to fire Medusa Eye the second her dispel landed. Bria froze again before she could properly move. Luke attacked once more through the pain. Kai slipped aside with the same reading skill the variant trolls had used in Troll Cave, then hit Luke at close range with air cannon. The blast hurled the hero backward toward the roof's edge. Luke barely saved himself by dragging his sword against the stone. Rick switched to fire. Flame rolled over Kai and did almost nothing. At the same time, another attack struck from above. Eris had already taken to the air, while Tornado pulled every eye forward. Thunder crashed down across the roof. Rick, Bria, and Sylvie took the hit badly. Frey alone reacted in time. She tracked Eris, fired a piercing arrow upward, and forced her to shift in midair. Kai punished that opening immediately. A red thorn punched through Frey's arm. Kai watched all of it and felt something unexpected: disappointment. He had spent so long hating this party that his hatred had grown larger than the people inside it. Now that he was facing them from the outside, that weight started collapsing. They were not giants. They were petty, cruel, frightened, and smaller than he remembered. This was no longer a clash between equals. This was punishment. Luke called him a demon's dog. Kai answered that the label no longer mattered. Human side or demon side meant little when both were rotten. Luke's party had never looked capable of reaching the Demon King anyway. That was when Luke changed. A tiny shape of satisfaction crossed them. Kai saw it and turned. Too late. The assassin was already behind him. The boy had waited through the whole exchange, hidden inside the pressure created by everyone else, doing exactly what his class was built to do. He had not tried to save the party. He had waited for a single clean moment. Then he used Assassinate. The black knife drove into Kai's side. The boy muttered to himself as if the fight might finally be over. Kai dropped to one knee. Then the boy coughed up in pain and stared in disbelief. Kai stood back up. He had already prepared Dragonslayer stance. During its short active window, any physical attack that landed was turned aside and thrown back at double force. Assassinate still counted as a physical strike. The reflected hit rolled that same chance on the assassin instead. The boy died almost at once. Bria screamed his name, so that was it. The masked assassin had been Cran. Kai had suspected from the start that the boy was one of Bria's broken toys. Her reaction confirmed it. Kai told her he had no personal grudge against the boy. He had at least given him a quick death. The moment Sylvie removed Bria's paralysis, Bria rushed in with murder in her eyes. Kai stopped her again with Medusa Eye. Luke attacked from the front at the same time. Kai slipped past the strike, and Eris answered from above with another thunderstorm. Rick, Frey, and Sylvie were forced to take the hit together. Sylvie endured it, raised a wide healing spell, and tried to steady the group. Kai immediately sent thorns at her. She barely avoided it. That small movement told him she had actually learned something. A healer using a wide recovery spell had to expect to become the next target. He had taught her that himself. Luke came again. He cut across Kai's back. A heartbeat later, the same injury opened across Luke instead. He staggered away in pain. Sylvie answered at once with her strongest recovery magic. Kai responded with cold breath. A freezing storm rolled over the clustered party. Sylvie screamed for everyone to scatter. Luke and Frey escaped the center. Rick did not. Frost locked over his body, while Eris hit the retreating Luke and Frey with another wave of lightning. Kai then drove another red thorn into Bria's side. Bria finally understood what he was doing. He had passed up fatal openings again and again. He was choosing not to kill her. Kai told her the truth. Until Sylvie's MP ran dry, all of them were going to keep suffering. Luke attacked again. Thorns flashed out. Luke twisted away in midair, but the thorn kept going and tore through Bria's cheek and ear instead. Her scream echoed across the roof. Kai followed with Gale Tornado. The green storm hit Luke and Bria together and carved them up so badly that even Kai decided he had pushed enough for the moment, so he called to Eris. Eris dropped from the sky, took his hand, and flew him high above the roof. From that height, neither side could hit the other. Kai looked down and told Sylvie she had 10 seconds to heal the party properly. It was part of the punishment. Sylvie hated him for it, but she still did it. She cast Healing Rain, then poured extra recovery into Luke and Bria. Kai counted the seconds in silence. When the 10 seconds ended, he let go of Eris's hand and fell. He broke the landing with air cannon, but Luke and Bria were ready. Both attacked him before he could fully settle. Their blades passed through him. Only then did Sylvie realize Kai still had another hidden defense. Kai trapped Luke and Bria in red fire immediately after that. Flame trap wrapped around them like living heat. He then froze Bria again with Medusa Eye, while Luke rolled free and tried to recover some distance. Sylvie demanded to know what had happened to him. This could not be the Kai she knew. This had to be the demon's influence. Kai told her she was wrong. Then he used another stolen trick. With a spell, he forced Luke's own hero magic back through the same system that belonged to him. Golden Thorn appeared on Luke's head. A crown of golden spikes bit into his skull and kept tightening. The damage was not even the real point. The spell existed for pain. It was torture turned into magic. Luke dropped to the roof and writhed. Frey tried to save him with an arrow. Kai reflected that too, and tore open her shoulder. Then, he placed Golden Thorn on her as well. She collapsed next to Luke, clutching her head in agony. Rick finally broke. He ran for the black vortex that linked the rooftop to the inner tower. It was gone. Kai had removed it as soon as his former party arrived. Rick turned back in panic, and Kai drained a large chunk of his remaining MP from a distance. Then he rushed in and started cutting him with a skill that lowered intelligence every time it hit. Rick stumbled, cast badly, and fell apart even faster than the others. That was when Sylvie stepped in front of him. Kai slashed her once. Then again, without going deep enough to kill. She did not move. She asked if that was enough. Kai stared at her for a second, irritated by how uselessly stubborn that looked. Then he put Golden Thorn on her too, and told her to wait. Luke, half mad with pain and rage, kept cutting at Kai anyway. Nothing landed. He finally switched to hero magic and used magma eruption. Kai fired a glowing vine toward Eris. She grabbed it and pulled him out of the blast zone. Eris called down the obvious truth. He was terrible at torture. Kai admitted she had a point. Simple pain lost force after a while. Even these people were starting to adapt. The tower core had already taken enough. The dungeon had fed well on their fear and despair. Sylvie, still shaking under Golden Thorn, demanded to know what he meant by that. Kai answered plainly. This had never been only revenge. It had also been work. A dungeon could grow by feeding on suffering, fear, and hopelessness. That was why he and Eris had staged this here, instead of taking easier kills elsewhere. Sylvie asked what difference remained between him and the people he hated. Kai said there was no clean answer. In this world, people killed what threatened them because there was no room to safely carry every criminal back in chains. Many told themselves that made their killing righteous. Kai no longer cared about the word. Then he chose the first death. Rick. A red thorn entered the mage's eye. The body jerked once and went still. Kai looked down at the corpse and felt almost nothing useful. Satisfaction did not come. Only disgust remained. Then he killed Frey. The next thorn went through her throat. Then Bria, still frozen in place, she took the next strike through the mouth and into the back of the neck. Luke lost his mind at that point. He swung and swung with no plan left. Kai reflected one more heavy strike with Dragonslayer stance, and the returned force tore Luke's right arm off completely. Eris laughed from above and said the despair pouring from the hero was richer than anything before. Kai then considered the final order of death. Sylvie first, to deepen Luke's collapse, or Luke first, then let Sylvie break after. He chose Luke. The others were down, but not fully dead yet. Members of a hero party did not pass instantly when their HP hit 0. There was still a grace period before true death, as long as no revival came. Sylvie could have saved them with time, but Eris had already kept her from using any long resurrection spell. That window was still counting down. Luke sat broken and muttering at the floor. Kai raised a hand to finish it. Then time stopped. Everything froze. Eris hung in the air in the middle of a wing beat and did not fall. The black clouds above stopped moving. Kai could still think. That was all. For one bad instant, he wondered if he had died. Then the sky changed. The black clouds split, and golden light poured through them in long, radiant lines. Trumpets sounded from nowhere and everywhere at once. Kai knew immediately that the fear and respect rising inside him was not truly his. The light itself was pressing those feelings into him. If his body had still moved, he might have fallen flat on the stone just from that pressure alone. A single beam of gold dropped onto Luke, and only Luke moved. The rest of the world remained frozen while the hero stood inside that pillar of light. His body restored itself instantly. The result simply appeared whole, as if a higher hand had reached into reality and corrected the scene to its liking. Kai felt sick with rage. This was not even a miracle with cost or shape. It was a cheap rewrite. Luke, however, saw only proof of his own greatness. He raised both hands toward the light and begged the Raiden god for power to kill the man who had sided with a demon. He said he would give anything for it. The answer came at once. Golden fire burned into the back of his hand. Luke screamed, but instead of recoiling, he thrust the hand higher and asked for more. If pain would become power, then he wanted all of it. He swore that whatever pain he received, he would repay it many times over to the enemies of the god. The branding finished. A large mark remained burned into his hand, still shining gold. Then the light faded. The clouds closed again. The trumpet stopped. Time resumed with violent suddenness. Wind struck Kai's face again. He stumbled one step and barely caught himself. Eris shouted for him to run. Kai told her not to come close. Luke was already moving. The sword he had dropped earlier flew into his hand without him even touching it. Kai immediately used a status reading skill. The result nearly made him swear aloud. Luke's class had changed. A new mark now sat beside Hero and Hero Magic, matching the one burned into his hand. His level and major stat had been multiplied by 10. The numbers looked too stupid to be real. Luke moved. Kai did not see the start. He only understood what happened after the sword had already passed through him. Physical nullification saved him again. Without it, he would have died before his eyes could even catch up. Luke realized that. So, he switched to magic. Eris dove. Kai's mind entered that narrow state that only appeared when death came too close. He could not outrun what Luke was about to cast. With Luke's intelligence now multiplied, the next spell could wipe out the whole roof and far beyond it. So Kai stopped thinking about escape. He used Draw spell to pull clock acceleration from Luke and cast it on himself. The world slowed even more. Kai launched forward. Luke was still speaking the first half of a new spell. Golden light had already gathered in his palm. Kai dropped his short blade. Instead, he used the one skill at the root of everything, Steel Star. His fingertip barely touched Luke's glowing palm. The gathered light vanished at once. Luke's face changed for the first time since divine intervention. Kai's momentum carried him straight into the hero. He knocked Luke down and landed over him. Luke still managed to swing. He moved too fast for the eye, but Kai had already prepared the Dragon Slayer stance. A strike thrown 10 times, Luke's former strength was reflected back at double force. The roof shook, and Luke died instantly. The reflected blow had erased Luke's upper body so completely. Then the backlash hit. A sharp wave of nausea slammed through him. Headache, spinning vision, and the ugly feeling of something tearing through his mind all at once. He knew that pain well. It was the price of Steel Star. Every time he took a skill, his body and mind paid for it. This was worse than usual. He dropped to one knee. Eris landed and caught him before he fell farther. She had seen the aftermath of his stealing before, but never like this. Kai managed to explain. He had taken the marked hero magic itself away, then used the reflected strike to finish Luke. If he had tried to run instead, he would almost certainly have died. Eris was stunned by the scale of what he told her next. Luke's numbers had truly risen tenfold. That was when Sylvie spoke. She had heard something during the frozen moment. The message had told the despairing hero to surrender everything in exchange for power to kill the deviant. Then Sylvie warned him to look behind. Luke's corpse was rising. The branded hand lifted first, and the rest of the corpse came after it, like a puppet dragged by strings. The sword slid back into the marked hand and stuck there unnaturally. Gold light burst across it, and thick miasma poured out at the same time. Kai threw miasma barrier around himself and Eris immediately. Sylvie barely got her own holy barrier up in time. He checked the thing's status. Luke was gone. What remained was some broken form wearing the name and power of the branded class. It still held massive stats and huge MP, and one of its skills was already listed as corrupted. So Kai used one of the new spells he had stolen, Apocalypse Edge. Black lightning speared down and smashed across most of the roof. It was a terrifying attack, even in Kai's weakened version. One of the few marked hero spells he could actually afford to cast with his own MP. The black lightning faded. The branded corpse remained untouched. Only then did Kai remember another stolen spell, Invincible. The marked Luke had already used it. Eris answered with thunder of her own. It did nothing. Then the corpse moved, but the movement was wrong. This thing slid and snapped like something pulled by an unseen hand. The speed was still monstrous. Kai checked what he could. Invincible had 17 seconds left. Its cooldown would be 30 after that. That gave him a brutal choice. Survive 17 seconds without taking one clean hit, then kill it before the next impossible spell came out. He knew how bad those spells were. There was no clean answer. Then Kai saw a dirty one. The dungeon, he shouted to Eris. The moment the corpse stopped moving, she had to open a a dungeon gate directly under it. Eris understood immediately. Then Kai and Sylvie worked together without hesitation. Sylvie used Holy Bind. Kai threw sticky web over it. Medusa, I failed. Sylvie followed with a weakening Holy Mark instead, and this time it landed. For a few seconds, the corpse lost its physical force completely. It could not break the web. Eris opened the gate beneath it. The dark vortex swallowed the branded corpse whole. The gate dragged the corpse into the dungeon interior. A dungeon gate could not simply be shut with a living target still inside. If left alone, the thing might crawl right back out once it regained motion, so Kai jumped after it. The transition dropped him into a small obsidian room. The corpse was already there in front of him. Without whatever had been controlling it from above, it had collapsed into something almost helpless. The marked hand kept lifting and falling as if the brand itself was struggling to make the body move again. The body crawled weakly toward the gate. Kai did not wait. He sent a thorn straight through the branded hand. The red thorn burrowed deep into the glowing mark. The brand resisted for a moment, then cracked. A sharp sound rang through the room. The brand shattered. At once, the corpse lost even that weak, false motion. The whole thing dried and collapsed into dark sand. Kai tried to confirm it with another reading skill, but there was no valid target left. Luke was completely gone. Only then did he sit down hard. Eris and Sylvie came through the gate a moment later. Eris asked at once if he was safe. Kai said yes, barely. Sylvie was there too. Kai called her a fool for following instead of running, but she pointed out the obvious. She could not fly from the rooftop, and there had been nowhere safe to go anyway. Once the shock settled, they pieced together what had happened. The branded corpse had not truly been thinking. Once it fell into the dungeon, that higher control vanished. That meant one thing. The Raiden God's hand could not properly reach into a dungeon. Eris took that badly. She had always liked the idea of placing a final battlefield outside the dungeon, where a master could still flee if needed. Now she had to admit there was at least one reason dungeon rulers traditionally waited at the deepest point. Kai said that if they truly planned to kill the Demon King one day, knowledge like this mattered. Then Eris looked at Sylvie and said there was no need to kill her after all. The tower had already taken enough energy from the hero party's collapse. One more human life would not change much now. Instead of thanking her, Sylvie asked a different question. Why could she understand Eris now? During the battle at the tower before, demon speech had been impossible for her to grasp. Now it sounded like normal language. Kai and Eris explained the truth. With Luke dead, the curse tying the party together weakened enough for Sylvie to understand demon speech. Sylvie admitted that her automatic hatred toward Eris no longer felt as strong as before. Kai said the same was true for him. Eris asked Sylvie what she intended to do now. Sylvie answered more calmly than Kai expected. The grand talk of gods and demon kings had never felt real to her. Their party used holy purpose as a banner, but most of its members did not truly live for that goal. Luke may have started believing his own slogans by the end. The others had only used the hero's name to excuse selfishness. Then Sylvie said the reason she had come to the tower. She had come to apologize to Kai. Kai's face hardened at once. He asked whether she thought an apology could erase what had been done, or whether she only wanted to feel lighter by saying the right words. Sylvie did not defend herself. She admitted that at first she had thought in exactly that selfish way, but the longer she faced it, the uglier that thought became. So she changed what she was asking for. Not cheap forgiveness, a chance to atone. Even if that chance ended with Kai killing her. She had hidden certain truths from the church and revealed others in just the right way to force Luke's party back to the restored tower. She had done that because she wanted them dragged to the place where Kai was waiting. Kai could not deny that. Eris said if Sylvie stayed, she should stay openly. She should be kept close, trained hard, and tied firmly enough to Kai's side that no human or demon could pull her away, use her, or turn her into a weakness. Kai objected at once. Eris ignored him. If Sylvie remained the timid girl she looked like now, demon territory would make easy prey of her. Kai was still resisting when Sylvie held something out in her palm, the pendant, the repaired one. The ceramic locket was still cracked and slightly warped, but everything had been gathered and preserved. Kai asked Sylvie if she had done that. She admitted it quietly. She had picked up the fragments before the wind carried them away. That broke something in Kai's resistance. Then Sylvie asked why Kai had chosen the demon side if the Demon King had slaughtered his family. Kai answered without hesitation that he had not joined the Demon King. He had joined Eris. That made sense to Sylvie at once. Kai let out a long breath. He was not going to cast Sylvie aside. Not after the pendant, so he gave her a place. She would help him take revenge on the Demon King. Sylvie accepted. Eris added that if Sylvie stayed, she would harden her herself. Kai looked at both of them and realized how strange the road ahead had become. After feeding on Luke's despair, the Tower of Ruin grew even stronger. From the top, it already looked as if the whole visible region would soon drown in miasma. Miasma drove people mad, turned them against each other, and if the exposure continued long enough, changed them into monsters. The nearby branches gave up on saving the whole area. Then Alice's report brought new information. The church planned to move the altar core to a safer city. Kai had recovered Alice before it was too late. Cleanse pulled her back from the edge of true death. Alice survived, and after money and pressure, she agreed to work as their spy on the human side. Kai stood on the tower and looked down at the city with Sylvie beside him. Their next target had finally appeared.